Let's take a look at the Big 12 Week 6 scores and react to them, bro. There are some
Yes.
crazy ones.
Yes.
Crazy ones. Starting with Friday. I don't know if anyone that is not a Houston Cougars fan predicted them to win. And honestly, I bet a lot of Cougars fans didn't either. They dropped 30 points on the road at TCU to pick up their first Big 12 win of the season, 30-19 at TCU. I don't know about you, Kenny. I am completely shocked because I thought Houston was by far the worst team in the Big 12, and they got the dub.
Are we actually going to see Willie Fritz experiment come to life here? I mean, what a turnaround in their two last games. They couldn't even score a single point, and now they're putting up 30. This is, I gotta say, it's impressive. Maybe it took the players a little bit of time to buy in to what Willie Fritz was, selling them, but holy crap, dude! I'm excited for Houston. I was like thinking that you would at least get a touchdown, and you put 30 up on TCU. So good for you. TCU is, wow, Sonny Dykes, what are you doing, buddy? This is kind of scary for you guys. I don't know what happened to this team.
I'm glad they
It's
beat KU. I'm glad they beat KU, and then the next week they lay an egg at
it's
home. That's
it
twice now at home they've lost to Big 12
yeah,
teams.
exactly. And you and I were talking about how Arizona State needed to beat KU, which we'll get to that. But it basically took Houston out of the worst team in the league in terms of power rankings for me and for my money. And it kind of makes that Houston KU game look a little more juicier, you know. Yeah, TCU, as far as I'm concerned, they're the second worst team in the Big 12.
And we're going to get into our power rankings in the next segment. But yeah, man, I would agree. I would put TCU probably second worst right now.
Yeah.
So maybe, I don't know how far UCF is, but they'd be right down there considering they almost lost to them and then they got beat at home by a
Yeah.
lot by Colorado. But that's another thing. Yeah. Houston's new quarterback has some wheels. They need to change things up. Yeah. 11 carries, 97 yards, and a touchdown, it says right there, by Chris. So yeah, I mean, I watched the game. I had it on mute. But yeah, their quarterback is pretty decent. Zion Chris.
John is saying that Iowa State needs to play a legit team. And I think this is a perfect segue to get to the next game, Iowa State and Baylor. You know, you and I kind of watched this game a little bit back and forth as we were kind of switching channels, to check out KU, Iowa State. We also were watching the Royals Yankees game. And yeah, Iowa State, I haven't really bought into them. Now they are the highest ranked team in the Big 12 currently. Um, and 43 points is still pretty impressive. I mean, Baylor, although Baylor hasn't won a game, it does look like they are fighting in these games.
They have a pulse because they were up like 14-0 or
Yes.
14-3 or something like that at Iowa State. Now they got destroyed after that. But still, I mean, they're putting up a fight. They did it late against BYU, early against Iowa State. I'd like to see them at some point put together a full game because I feel like a full game they might be pretty decent. But I don't know, man. Dave Aranda is kind of losing me right now.
I think the loss to Colorado has really affected their team in a bad way. I think that they're carrying that loss into the next weeks, and like it's like a compounding interest thing. It's like they carried it to the next game against BYU, and then BYU crushed them at home at their home opener, and then that stacks on top of this game against Iowa State, and then now this is going to stack. So it's just like it just keeps like compounding on itself, where like, yes, you guys should have won against Colorado. You guys really misplayed that Hail Mary, and then you fumble it in the end zone in overtime. That's a heartbreaker, but you guys, the Baylor team has legitimately let that loss carry on to two more weeks of losses. There's no doubt about it. Like they're really, really crumbling a little bit, but they still I still think they got some players in there. It's just Dave Aranda. I mean, yeah, like you said, he's in the hot seat, man.
I mean,
He's
he has to
definitely.
be. He has to be.
It's
But
been a really, really rough few years for that coach.
getting back to Iowa State, John Schaefer says, I think ISU could lose 3 of their next 5 at West Virginia, at Utah, and at KU. I don't see that, considering KU plays at Arrowhead this year, and that place is going to be littered with Iowa State fans. Man, it's going to be like 50,000 Iowa State fans. They live in KC, especially for the Big 12 tournament. They're going to do it for this football game as well. I don't see them losing. I mean,
fans of Iowa State,
any of those, honestly. Iowa State looks good, man. They might be the best team in the Big 12, and we're going to find out here very soon.
I mean, like you said, Steve, Iowa State is not very far from Arrowhead. I mean, they would take that drive all day long.
3 hours.
It's not going to be a home field advantage for KU at all. At all. I mean, if anything, it's going to be more of an away game for them. So it's like I don't consider that tough at all for them. I would grant you Utah as probably being their toughest opponent. West Virginia hasn't done enough to really show me that they've got the juice. They've beaten KU and Oklahoma State, which we'll get into our power rankings later, like Steve said. But Oklahoma State, we have no idea what's wrong with them. And KU is looking like the worst team, one of the worst, if not the worst team in the Big 12. And,
True.
And it's just like Iowa State, I think, can handle West Virginia. They're going to have a game against Utah, and they're going to be able to walk all over KU. So I don't consider their next 3 games of their next 5 a problem whatsoever. I respectfully disagree. Respectfully disagree.
I think it could be interesting. I really do. I don't know what's going on with Utah. We're going to find out soon. Mm-hmm. West Virginia, they might be tougher than people think. And I feel like, again, this is another great segue as we move into West Virginia versus Oklahoma State. I mean, this game was never close. I think they were up 24-0, 31-7 at halftime. Honestly, they were going to run out the clock, but Oklahoma State called a timeout after they scored. After West Virginia's first play. And then the Mountaineers were like, okay, you want to call a timeout? We're going to score. And they came down and scored. They ended up winning 38-14. Oklahoma State stinks right now. Their quarterback stinks. Their defense is god-awful. I don't feel like West Virginia is that good. They might have played their best game of the season. I think it was their second win against Oklahoma State ever, or at least at Oklahoma State. So I don't know, man. I don't know where to rank either of these teams. We're going to do the ranking soon, but I would put Oklahoma State definitely bottom 6.
Steve, this is extremely alarming if you're an Oklahoma State Cowboys fan because you just lost at home twice. We talked about how rare it is to win when you're a team coming into Stillwater and trying to win there. It's extremely, extremely difficult. And 2 teams have already taken wins off of them at their own turf. So Oklahoma State is on fire right now in terms of of expectations and these are expectations that Mike Gundy has put up for this program, that you don't just walk into Oklahoma State and win. Those are expectations that he has built upon over the years. And so for them to lose 2 home Big 12 games, this is really bad for them, especially after going to the Big 12 championship game last year. This is really bad for Oklahoma State. And Oklahoma State fans they're not happy. And I don't blame them for not being happy.
Oklahoma State quit on their season after the Utah game. I don't believe that. I just don't think they're very good. I do not. They can't run the ball. They can't stop anyone on defense. I mean, K-State did whatever they wanted. Honestly, K-State could have dropped 60 on them, if not for penalties and some drop passes. It could have been even worse. And yeah, the heavily imbalanced scheduling is one of the worst parts of this new Big 12. Well, every conference has that. Have you looked at Indiana's schedule? I mean, they're 5-0, 6-0. They played no one. They've played no one. I mean, Texas A&M, I don't know if you looked at the rest of their schedule. They got a pretty easy rest of the schedule. They got at Mississippi State. They do have LSU at home, which I feel like LSU is overrated. At South Carolina, terrible. At home against New Mexico State, terrible. At Auburn, and then versus
Auburn's like the worst team in
So,
the SEC right now.
they could go 11-1 easily because they don't play Alabama, they don't play Georgia, they don't play Tennessee. I mean, it's across every single conference because the imbalanced scheduling is one of the worst parts about college football. I mean, I think last year Oklahoma State had every single one of their tough games at home. This year they didn't get that. They did not get that luxury. So I agree with you, but also it's across every single conference, man.
It all goes back to Steve, when we were talking about just having 10-team conferences. I mean, I think every conference should just have 10 teams in it. And you should just make conferences so that every team plays every team. I mean, I don't know why it's something that they can do like right now if they wanted to, and they choose not to do it. And so then it leaves us to like speculate on who's actually really good and who isn't, because how do you determine that when you're in a conference with 20 something teams and not everybody's played everybody, and yet you're trying to figure out who's the strongest? It's like, well, I don't know how you can know, because it's all over the place.
It's all relative versus back, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when K-State won the Big 12, 2012, K-State played everyone. They played everyone, and they won at Oklahoma. They had Texas at home. They beat both of them. Yeah.
It just needs to change.
It does. It does need to change.
Yeah. It needs to change.
As we talked about how all these conferences are different, but also the same. Segue into UCF at Florida. This was shocking, honestly. I didn't think Florida was very good, but it turns out UCF is just not a good football team. I mean, if they can't run the ball, they can't win, man, because I mean, their leading rusher only had 75 yards, only had 13 points on offense. I'm honestly surprised that Florida only scored 24 points, because UCF's defense, it's like Swiss cheese, man. It's bad.
Yeah. I said this in my prediction. I haven't watched any Florida games, so I didn't know. I have to completely reevaluate my take on UCF's offense, because this is atrocious. I thought UCF actually had an offense, and how could you not think that when their entire like the preseason hype was like unbelievable. They just hyped up UCF's offense like they're going to be incredible. The speed on this team, they're going to run all over the place. They have the talent for sure, but I don't know if it's coaching staff. I don't know if it's execution. This is horrible. This looks so bad for the Big 12, and but it looks even worse for UCF.
They are 30 seconds away from being 2-3 instead of 3-2, man. I mean, they honestly should have lost at TCU, and we know TCU isn't good. They're not good. And so UCF, I feel like this kind of makes Colorado's win not look as good, because I don't think Florida is very good. They haven't been good for a while, honestly. And I know Florida fans have been upset about that for a long time now, but this was not good. And I don't know if it's because of hurricane displacement. I don't know. But lots of UCF fans used to comment. They're not commenting right now because their team's not winning. It's not good, man. It's not good. And they're lucky they're not playing K-State this year. I'll say that. They are lucky.
Yeah. So, like what you just said. Now, Colorado's having a bye week, so they didn't have any games this week to really show what they can do, because we're going to be playing them next weekend. But you're right, Steve. It makes that win over UCF not as great. And also their win over Baylor. Baylor has been really bad too. So both the Colorado's wins have been like, okay, cool. But you could say the same thing about K-State winning over Oklahoma State. They're like, Oklahoma State, cool. They haven't won anything. But I will say K-State did also beat Arizona and Tulane, which those are both insanely talented teams, as we saw already. But
Tulane dropped 70. They dropped 70 yesterday.
Yeah, that's wild. That's insane. That's like basketball numbers. So get along to get along. They won't do it. It's probably talking about the conferences being limited to 10. But if they split the Big 12 up into divisions, how would you do it? Oh, just 2 divisions, 8 teams a division. It'd be like the
I
Big
would do
Eight.
I would do
Big
East and
Eight.
West.
Yeah, it'd be the the Big 12, but like the Big Eight and then East and West or whatever.
I think they should do East and West because there's lots of games. Okay, for instance, let me throw this out there. The ACC now has Stanford and Cal, and then Miami and North Carolina State and all those teams, right? So Miami was playing at Cal last night, and I think that game kicked off at 10 or 10:30 Central, which is like 11 or 11:30 Eastern, and that game did not get over until like 3 a.m. Eastern time, which was I think like midnight on the West Coast. That cannot be happening on a normal basis, man. What they've done with all these different conferences and having teams from all over the country playing each other during the regular season, it's not good, man. It's fine for like a bowl game, but it's not good. So I would do it in terms of the Big 12. I would put all the Western teams, Arizona, Utah, Colorado, all of that. They'd all play each other. That's 7 games, and then they'd play 4 on the other side, which is 11 games, and then there's only 1 non-conference game. I feel like that's the best way to do it. But I don't know. How would you do it?
I agree. I think it would be around the same. It'd either be East and West or North and South. Like you go either way with that. And I think you would just try to divide it as even. I think East and West would probably be the best way to do divisions. Just because like you can kind of.
I'm tired of these 10 o'clock kickoffs, man.
I'm also tired of it as well. I actually saw like a post about like it was some, I guess like maybe USC volleyball team, and it showed like the amount of miles traveled for all their away games, and it was so insane.
They went from LA to New York City to play Rutgers, and then they went back, and then they went to Baltimore, Maryland to play Maryland, and then they went back, and then they went to Pennsylvania to play Penn State, and then they went back. It's crazy what's going on, dude.
It's so dumb. It's so dumb. Like, I don't want to get into it because I feel like it is a rant that can go on and on, but I feel like it could just be summarized in like, I think there's going to be another realignment. As annoying as that sounds, there's probably going to be another realignment because I don't think it's sustainable. I do not think it's sustainable for these schools to be able to pull this off. I mean, you're literally draining so much money in just travel expenses.
And you're draining the body of the student athlete who has a volleyball game in New York. You have to fly all the way back to LA and they have a class the next day. Like that's versus going like a couple hours up the road to play, UCLA or Stanford or Cal or whoever, you know what I'm saying?
Or as far west as like Arizona, like you don't.
Yeah. Or Colorado or Utah or Oregon or whatever it is, right?
Flying across the country and playing like these super late games, like you're dropping so much money on expenses. And it's not just big ticket, like just football teams. It's volleyball teams, it's tennis teams, it's like all
soccer, basketball, all of it. Every sport.
So much. The logistics are probably way too much for like this realignment, and they need to change it. They just need to go back. I mean, it's annoying to say that, but because like it's all about like contracts and whatever. And if TV programs are going to pay out, then I guess they're going to pay out, but I don't think it's worth it. I think it's either like one of two things. Either the TV stations are going to pay out, which they're going to get their money from somewhere, I guess. Or you're going to get more tuition that needs to be paid out. And, the cost of college is going to go through the freaking roof. So
I want to say one more thing on this, and then we can move on to the next game. I agree with taking away most of the non-con games. I never thought about that. Yeah. So another thing to do, if we're not going to do divisions, would be to like so there's 16 teams, right? So you can play 15 of them in basketball or whatever it is. For football, why not do 10 conference games, right? You're playing 10 out of the 15. There's 5 you play every year, and then you rotate the other 5 for every other year, right? So K-State would play every year. They play KU, they play Iowa State, they play Oklahoma State. You know what I mean? Like Colorado, you'd take away like pick 5 games you play every single year and then rotate the other 5 with the rest of the teams. So that's
Yes.
one way to do it. So,
I agree. That would make so much sense. But the thing is we live in a world where people don't want to do what makes sense. They want to do the most confusing ass backwards thing that they can think of.
they want AI to make their schedules.
Chat GPT
Yep.
schedule maker.
Let's move on here. We stayed up for this, man. This came down to the wire. Arizona State scored 21 points in the fourth quarter to win with about a minute left or so at home, 35-31 over KU. KU's now 1-5, 0-3 in the Big 12. They have to be considered the worst team in the conference right now.
Arizona State, you didn't let me down. I was so thankful for you going home and pulling out the dub. I mean, Steve and I, we were watching this. At this point, we were extremely tipsy. And I remember after they scored that touchdown with time expiring, I was just I jumped out of the couch. I set my drink down. I started like just air fist in the air. I'm like, yes, go Arizona State.
It was a scene from Jersey Shore. Fist pumping.
Yeah. Oh man, thank you so much for making Saturday even sweeter for me. Arizona State, you gave me a gift. I think I'm thankful for that. Thank you, appreciate it so much.
Absolutely. Shout out to their running back, Scadaboo. 186 yards and 25 carries and a touchdown. That guy's a beast, man. Like that one guy, he literally just trucked him right at the goal line, dude. He just ran him over. It was beautiful. Beautiful to see.
Oh man, it made me actually kind of excited for when we get to play KU because we have a running back that likes to do that too, Steve. And
Yep, I'm excited.
It's gonna be such a beautiful thing to watch. And at that point, I'm hoping Kansas still doesn't have a win on the board, and they're just completely demoralized. They're coming to our turf. There ain't no way in hell we're losing there. And we would be 16-0. The streak of 16 wins over KU. It's such a beautiful stat, and I love repeating it over and over and over again.
Absolutely. Let's move on to the last game here in the Big 12. I can't scroll down anymore. Texas Tech gets a massive win at Arizona, 28-22. Tatterota McMillan fumbles late in the game to seal the win for Texas Tech. Texas Tech is the only 3-0 team in the conference. I think we may have, maybe downplay Texas Tech because they barely beat Abilene Christian. They lost at Washington State, but they're the number one team in the Big 12 right now, man. They're looking really, really, really good, man. Taj Brooks did his thing, 128 yards, 3 touchdowns. We watched this game, man. It was crazy. It really was.
Steve, I'd like to point you to the fact that I had Texas Tech ranked fifth on my power rankings. I'm pretty sure you had Texas Tech a little lower on your power rankings. Can't remember exactly where you had them, but I had fifth. And I have
it right here. Do you want to look at it really quick?
Yeah,
I have last week's power rankings right here. I'm glad you asked.
Where did you have them?
I had Texas Tech
7th. So 7th. I had them a little higher, and it's looking pretty good. It's looking pretty good.
It is, and we'll look at that again here in the next segment because we are going to move on to power rankings next.
So, but to what you said, Arizona might have had a little bit of a hangover, but this was your Big 12 opener. Arizona, what are you doing? You're supposed to be winning at home on your Big 12 opener. That's what you're supposed to do. But to be fair, they did take Utah's Big 12 opener away from them. So that's, take that for what it's worth. But they basically, Texas Tech did to Arizona what Arizona did to Utah. And
They did.
Texas Tech is slowly becoming a contender. They're kind of like the dark horse right now. I think they're going to actually be surprisingly a top 5 team in the Big 12. I think that's kind of surprising given that we had Arizona looking like they were going to be up there. Utah was going to be like, they were supposed to be up there. K-State, Iowa State, Kansas was predicted to be high up there. Oklahoma State was predicted to be high up there, but all these teams are crumbling, but yet Texas Tech is pulling out these dubs, and it doesn't look pretty, but they're getting the dubs. So
I mean, they've won a bunch of close games. I think they said their head coach Joe McGuire is like 11-3 in 1-score games. So they know how to win close games, man. They do.
All right, Steve. The comment section is blowing up right now. We got to answer some of this.
Yeah.
Stuff
So
here.
I'm gonna pull this up really quickly because this is the most important one. It seemed like ASU was destined to win that game. I wasn't surprised KU gave it up at the end. Yeah, I mean they've done that every single game this season, right? Like the only win they have, we're in October. The only win KU has is against an FCS team. That is crazy because they keep giving up games at the end, man. They don't know how to win. They do not know how to win close games, dude.
I'm so glad I am not a KU fan.
I'm gonna stop sharing screen here. That's the Big 12 Week 6 recap.